It's time to get back in the mix with diversity business strategist Torin Ellis.
So for many of you, you understand that we are right now in the midst of this pandemic, and I dedicated the entire show today to COVID-19, wanted to handle the PPP aspect, small business aspect, and later in the show, we'll talk about the employee side, the entrepreneur side. That's the reason why the show is titled Career Mix. And so today we get to live out the essence and the true meaning of why I named the show Career Mix. And so I promised before the break that we would hear from Mr. Brandon Brooks. Brandon Brooks is the founder of Inventrify. I can tell you that having been in business for 20-something years, access to talent, infrastructure, and public policy to a degree are absolutely critical aspects of growing a business concern. But you have to get started. And Inventrify sits right at that starting line for a number of small businesses in and around the Pennsylvania area, the region, and perhaps even the rest of the country. You can find Inventrify on Twitter at Inventrify. That's INVENTRIFY, Inventrify. Or you can find them at the web, inventrify.com. Brandon Brooks, welcome to Career Mix. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic today. Thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate your time.
Well deserved. And you've been doing a yeoman's job on Facebook in terms of calling out, businesses that have taken advantage of PPP and some of the others. But before we get into that conversation, tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and Inventrify.
Absolutely. So my name is Brandon Brooks. My company is Inventrify, and we are a small business crowdfunding platform. So the easiest terms to think of it in is something like a GoFundMe, a Kickstarter, except we work strictly with small businesses and specifically community-oriented businesses, the businesses that are going to have a strong impact within your community. We are nationwide, and in some cases, we have done some worldwide campaigns, so we're really excited about that. And previous to starting my own company, what I actually did was work in banking for years for one of the big four banks. And then after that, I was with a more community-oriented small bank. So I have a very unique perspective being on both ends of small business and banking when it came to this PPP situation and the SBA in general.
How did that banking experience and or other corporate experience seed or feed into the formation of Inventrify? What was happening? What were you thinking?
So I was working with a lot of small businesses as a banker, and I got the opportunity to not only see their finances, but to see how they were starting their businesses, and more importantly, where they were struggling and creating their businesses. And the common factor on every single one of them was the startup funds to really get their business off the ground. Forget scaling or growing their business. It was really just the beginning amount of capital. And so I started to research myself some different ways to help those small businesses. One thing led to another, and I found there was really no overall resource for them to crowdfund the capital to do so. And so I decided, hey, this is something I got to do myself.
Got it. And how old is it, Inventrify?
We'll be 4 years in August.
Congratulations. You are almost over that imaginary mark of businesses making it to the 5-year line. So I appreciate you. And I think that the basis of our conversation today will hinge on something far different than the parameters of PPP. And I'm appreciative of the government, and I get it when they said 500 employees when they brought it out. But I think what you and I are talking about, Brandon, are really businesses with 10 or less employees. Would we agree on that, or do you see it a little bit differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really do agree. I think that the main issue really comes down to the classification of small businesses. I personally don't believe that it should be up to 500 businesses or more, or less. And if it's going to be that classification, then there needs to be tiered classifications: 10 employees, 20 employees, 150 employees, and then up to 500 employees. And there's just no reality where a sole proprietorship or a business with 5 to 10 employees should be fighting for the same resources that a corporation that has 500 employees per location in some situations should be fighting for.
So why don't you take us to that starting point when the government decided that they wanted to dole out the money? I believe that first tranche was around $450 billion. Correct me. I don't have the accurate number, the exact number. But when they decided to do that, it seemed like the larger businesses were the ones that were benefiting. I've seen numbers that said that the average loan given out was around $250,000, and in some ways, I heard that the banks were deciding to do that because they got greater fees. It's more profitable for them, more rewarding for them to give out a loan and charge a percentage on a $250,000 loan versus the loans that smaller businesses need, which was on average like $40,000. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really great. It was $349 billion that was set aside specifically for small businesses. But what we saw happen was just like you said, the banks got money, got a percentage of the funding that they processed. So they were more motivated to work with the larger small businesses. For example, we look at something like Shake Shack, or we look at something like Potbelly, which these are corporations that are publicly traded. They received $10 billion, or 10 million, I apologize, $10 million each. Actually, Ruth Chris Steakhouse received $20 million because they had two separate entities technically. And so they received $10 million each, $20 million. And these banks, especially some of the big four banks, which I'm going to call out Chase Bank because their average loan was $500,000. What small business, what community business do we know? What local barbershop do we know? What local beer distributor do we know? What local pharmacy do we know that needs $500,000 to make it through this? Those aren't the businesses that are really getting the money, but those are the businesses that really needed the money. And so what kind of happened here on a larger scale is we saw more than 180 public traded companies. That means they're on the stock market. These companies received money from the small business program, more than 180 of them. And so that's kind of what I've been doing on my end, is breaking down these numbers and showing why they didn't need this money. They have many different avenues to get the money. And so the analogy that I've made, and this kind of makes it so simple for anybody to understand. Imagine that your family needs food stamps during this time to survive, right? To put food on your table. And the government,
and many families do, quite frankly. Go ahead.
Exactly. So let's say the government puts out a program and says, hey, we're going to give you food stamps. All you got to do is apply. But then they leave a loophole for a family that makes $300,000 a year. Their house is paid off. They have a $250,000 home equity line of credit and several high-end credit cards that they could utilize to get food. But they go in, they apply for this because it's free money to them, and they get approved for $10,000 in a month of food stamps. Now, when you, the family that really needs these food stamps, goes in and applies for the food stamps, you're told, hey, we're out of money. I'm sorry that we're out of money, but hey, if you want to sign this petition, we'll try to get Congress to give some more funding for you. That's exactly what the government just did to the SBA, on purpose or not. I'm not here to debate that. I'm here to look at the facts, and the facts of the situation is many small businesses are going out of business as we speak because these large corporations took money. Now, I'll segue just quickly here, because as of now, a lot of these publicly traded companies are giving the money back. Because
I was about to ask that. Yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
They're giving it back, but they're giving it back because of the pressure that we all put on them. Our voices matter. And this situation shows truly that our voices do matter and that we have some say in how this works. But the only problem with it, and there's always a little problem, is the fact that what happens to the bank fees? The banks made over $10 billion in fees. Banks.
Wow.
The large banks made $10 billion in fees from this whole program. Well, we have small businesses in every one of our local communities, people that we know, family, friends, people on Facebook, Twitter that we see, Instagram, wherever, they're going out of business while banks collected $10 billion in fees for this. So what's going to happen with that fee money?
So what do we do differently? Because, I watched an interview where Senator Tim Scott said that the first round of PPP helped about 1.2 million businesses. He was actually in conversation with the co-founder of Axios, and he said he expects that this second round of PPP is going to help about the same, another 1.2 million businesses, but that the government probably is going to have to do more. And there are a number of individuals that suggest that it's more than just allocating billions of dollars. It's great. It's certainly well received, but that we need legislation, we need moratoriums, we need a number of other aspects of life to be looked at. So what do you suggest we do differently this second time?
Well, for the second round, we have to more clearly define business structure. So there needs to be a breakdown for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. There needs to be a breakdown for businesses with 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, and the money needs to be tiered and given out in tiers just like that. But how do we do that? Because again, it's very difficult for me to get the Treasury Department on the line. It's very difficult for any of us as individuals to get the Treasury Department on the line. So one thing that I always strive to do is when I complain, come up with solutions. And my solution is call your Chamber of Commerce. What's your local Chamber of Commerce that I'm sure you're a member of as a small business owner? You pay fees to them. Call them. Make them call the local politicians. You get on the phone with the local politicians as well, but the more voices, the better. The chamber has a strong voice. And to this point, I'm not seeing many chambers speak up. So that's my call to action to them. Speak up for the small businesses that are members, that are paying members for you, and even the ones that aren't paying yet, because if they see that you're stepping up, maybe they'll decide, hey, I need to be a member of this chamber. They fought for me when I needed them most. We need to call our chamber. We need to call our state representatives. We need to call our Congress. We need to call Senate. We need to get them to clearly define how this money is going to go out. They've come out and they've said that that publicly traded companies should not be able to get this money, but they haven't made it clearly illegal for them to do so at this point. They said they'll be under scrutiny when it's all over. When it's all over, it's too late. Businesses are going out today. It's too late. It's too late for us to have an oversight committee to look at everything 2-3 months down the road when we've seen millions of small businesses go out already. And just so people understand the impact of a small business, imagine that your local barber shop, your local nail salon can't be there anymore. The one you go to every 2 weeks or every week, get your nails done, whatever, get your hair cut. Imagine that they can't be there anymore. So guess what's going to happen? It's going to leave a gap. Now you're going to have a Walmart get added into your area if it's not already there. And that's going to be your only option for you to go get your nails done, or if they add a Supercuts into your Walmart. That's what happens when these small businesses go out of business. Is it leaves a gap, and the big businesses are quick to fill that gap, and now they become our only option. And the people they're employing at these big businesses aren't having the same experience, aren't having the same pay, aren't having the same leadership of learning how to run these small businesses when you work there that you do when you have to go work at a Walmart or whatever the case may be. That's why these small businesses are so important, and we need to do everything we can to save them.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, again, it just reinforces the need for public policy and private responsibility. And what you are suggesting is that for a number of our listeners, that we pick up the phone and that we exercise our voice. I say it often. It's the number one step for me when I go into organizations looking to optimize their diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategy. I say, number one, you have to be empowered. You have to feel empowered. You have to feel like you can use your voice. You want people to use their voice. You want them to call. You want them to email. You want them to send messages via these digital platforms. You want people to rile up their social media tribes. You want people to be active. Brandon, I want to know from you, when we think about this second round, Do you have any insight on when it's supposed to start and maybe how it will look the second time around?
So the second round should be beginning any day now, and that's beautiful. That's fantastic. But I encourage you to apply now with whatever your financial institution is. Also, PayPal. Whether you have PayPal or use PayPal, go and apply through PayPal, because what these companies are doing, what these banks are doing now, or financial institutions, is they're going to be processing the backlogged loans first, which is going to cause a pretty severe issue, only because so many people were told, oh, don't even bother applying until the second round comes through because we're so far backlogged. So those people didn't apply at all. And now they're going to be trying to play catch up and possibly maybe get into this second round and maybe hope for a third round. So I've spoken to several different banks now, and each one of them has told me that this round of processing will be done at a first come, first serve basis, starting with their backlogged companies that have put in. Whether that's true or not, it'll be wait and see, because Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase, they said the same thing the first time. Their numbers of average loan being approved, 500,000, tells a different story than what they told me. So we'll see what happens with this one, but I do encourage you to apply through your financial institution as soon as possible.
So, Brandon, let me get a final thought from you. When we think about our listeners out there in various locales around the country, what is it that you want them to know, whether it be around PPP, whether it be around the work that you are doing through Inventrify? Your closing thoughts for our listeners on this Sunday afternoon.
My closing thoughts are, just know there's people out there just like me working for you night and day. We're putting in the work, but what we do also need is you to put in the work. Right now, so many of us can feel powerless only because of everything that's going on. The coronavirus, the SBA situation, our jobs being lost, so many people on unemployment. All that can make us feel very powerless. But we do have some power, and that power is our voices coming together and speaking together, which is, again, why I encourage you, call your local representatives, call your local chamber, call everybody, get them on the phone and tell them you demand change. And if they don't work for you, then make your voice known when it's time to come and vote. Or in the case of these chambers, you have say of who the chamber leadership is. Make sure your voice is known in that situation as well. Speak with your wallet, speak with your voice, and speak with your actions, because your power is the reason that a company like Shake Shack had to give back $10 million of their money. Your power is why your voice is why Ruth Chris is now giving back their $20 million. Your voice matters, and even though there's so many people working for you, you have to step up to the plate as well and take action.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, when I saw that Harvard University with a $42 billion endowment received even some funds, and certainly there's a bit of contention as to where those funds came from. But when I saw that they got funds, I was like, yo, something is wrong with this program for real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been hot the last couple of days, and I'm not letting up off the gas. I'm just
you're not,
not.
man. No, man. I said it in the beginning. Brandon Brooks, founder of Inventrify. I said to you, he's doing a yeoman's job of calling out large organizations on his personal Facebook page, but you can find Inventrify on Twitter at Inventrify, INVENTRIFY. You can find them online at inventrify.com. Brandon, I absolutely appreciate you for joining me this Sunday on Career Mix.
Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
You're absolutely welcome. And so, one of the things that we discussed in that conversation, Brandon said, I don't necessarily know the absolute solution, but I certainly know a few solutions. One additional solution that I would add to the conversation is that it would be great for the federal government to align with organizations that have a different data set. Companies like Intuit, they have different information. They are actually covering and handling 6 million small businesses around the world. They pay 1 in 12 employees. They have a different type of data and a view in the landscape that's rivaled by few. And so my hope is that the federal government and all that they are attempting to do to save small businesses, that they will align with organizations that can provide them with the type of insight that they are needing so that we can make sure we push this economy forward. Listen, I absolutely appreciated chatting with Brandon. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to handle the other side of Career Mix, and that's the side of people that have lost employment, the side of the conversation that touches the employee and what it looks like in the workplace. And we're going to be joined by Miss Bernie Frazier out of the Midwest. Don't go anywhere. Grab a drink. We'll be back in 2.
We'll be right back with more of the Career Mix with Torin Ellis. It's time to get back in the mix with diversity business strategist Torin Ellis.
So for many of you, you understand that we are right now in the midst of this pandemic, and I dedicated the entire show today to COVID-19, wanted to handle the PPP aspect, small business aspect, and later in the show, we'll talk about the employee side, the entrepreneur side. That's the reason why the show is titled Career Mix. And so today we get to live out the essence and the true meaning of why I named the show Career Mix. And so I promised before the break that we would hear from Mr. Brandon Brooks. Brandon Brooks is the founder of Inventrify. I can tell you that having been in business for 20-something years, access to talent, infrastructure, and public policy to a degree are absolutely critical aspects of growing a business concern. But you have to get started. And Inventrify sits right at that starting line for a number of small businesses in and around the Pennsylvania area, the region, and perhaps even the rest of the country. You can find Inventrify on Twitter at Inventrify. That's INVENTRIFY, Inventrify. Or you can find them at the web, inventrify.com. Brandon Brooks, welcome to Career Mix. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic today. Thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate your time.
Well deserved.